Bombay YouTube? It's Charles here with another edition of A Second Look, where I take a second or even third look, sometimes a fourth look, depending on how many times I've read the book, and a book I've read, possibly reviewed, and give you my feelings and thoughts on the book. As of right now, the great thing about comic book collecting is I think people they take for granted that once a book is released and available for so long that it becomes worthless. But these stories are timeless. It's an insight to somebody's creativity, their inner workings, thought processes. And when you go to an older book, you can often see the inspiration for books that are out right now. And say, for instance, you like a particular book in a particular genre, but it's only coming out periodically. Well, you can go back and find something in the same genre, maybe from the same universe, maybe even by the same author, and enjoy what they had put out before. And today I want to talk about Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. This is from CrossGen Comics, and it's number 5 from June 2004, so this goes way back. I remember when I first spotted this, I was at the old comic book store here in town called Norse Comics. And the owner, he actually opened up a new comic book store in Casper called Spellbound Apothecary and Entertainment. If you go to my channel, you'll see a lot of information. You'll see a lot of videos that I've actually shot in a comic book store that's Spellbound Apothecary and Entertainment. But I remember really being intrigued by the cover. The cover is brilliant. You have some kind of fighter, high heel boots, very stylized, kicking toward the camera, nunchucks and a sai in the other hand, and you have this kind of 60s aesthetic, which really gives away a little bit of the game because it is a period piece that takes place in the 60s. Just to give you a little bit of the background here. Given the continuing threat posed by Lazarus Bell and his international criminal cartel Axis, we're continuing the Basildon program, albeit under very unusual circumstances. Previous reports stated that our top agent Charles Basildon and his understudy field agent Stephanie Shelley were both killed while infiltrating Bell's secret base on Lanzarote Island. We were therefore quite surprised when Agent Shelley arrived at our Carnaby Street location, very much alive, brainwashed into assassinating me. After a brief struggle, in which she also killed and injured several of our operatives, Shelley was subdued by Agent Philippa Westlake and deprogrammed by our best experts. I have since teamed with Shelley and Westlake and dispatched them to find Bell and put an end to his plans for unleashing a super plague upon the world. Agent Westlake and Agent Shelley are currently tracking down known associates of Bell, hopefully backtracking to Bell's current location. And so that is pretty much the preamble told in the guise of a security brief. So you have the top secret post right here, and then you have the two IDs introducing our two main characters of Charles Basildon and Stephanie Shelley, MI6 agents, and we start here in Damascus, Syria, 1965. And if you are a fan of James Bond, this book right here is really kind of, to me, a mix of James Bond, but it has the vibe of Danger Girl, that kind of campy, over-the-top action with a slight espionage twist, and there's action on every page. And the story goes from Damascus to, let's see, I know they end up in South America, but they chasing leads to find this guy. Like I said, they start in Damascus, working their way over to Europe, to Africa, where they interrupt the sale of this poison this big weapon, and it leads him to Belize. And the main guy that they've been looking for, along with his cohorts who happen to be Adolf and it looks like Mussolini. So very interesting, leading, kind of feeding into that theory that, World War II leaders had escaped to South America and Belize. And like I said, if you like action, you like intrigue, you like espionage, this is the book for you. And we find out that the other guy who would die on mission, not only was he alive, but he also was taken in by this Axis, if you will. And going back to these back issues too, for me it's a fun part of collecting, because when I find a book I like, the hunt is on. It makes me want to go back and get to know these characters from the previous issues from this run. And even, go back, see if I can find some later issues of this run and find out where the story goes. And, I use my resources like Nucadia.com. They have a lot of back issues, especially from this time period, so that'll be a place I look. Midtown Comics, they have a vast array of back issues. And then your local comic book store. I didn't find this, on some major website or, a place that aggregates a lot of back issues. It was just happened to be in a box I was digging through at my local comic book store. And so I suggest, give these older comics a chance. This story, the style of it, the storytelling, the art, it could have been put out last week. And that's how timeless a story this is. And if I was a snub, looking down on, independent books I'd never heard of, or not willing to give something a try, or writing off a back issue, I wouldn't have found this book. And then, another great thing too about these books is they're like time capsules, because you can go back and you can see, advertisements. Like, for instance, this Lady Death book called The Wild Hunt. I didn't even know Lady Death had books outside the Coffin Comics until today. And so that's going to be something else that I can look for, when I'm going online to these online retailers, and even, want to stop in a little comic book store somewhere. So that's my thought. Get a hold of this book if you can, and I'll see you next time. Till then, keep reading them books. I'm out.